question for you in my report. That's okay. Well, good morning, everyone. It's 11:30. We're going to go ahead and kick off our pre-commission. So for the president's report, just a reminder, we have our joint meeting with Garden City. It's on Tuesday of next week. Director, we're going to be posting the agenda today. Okay, perfect. And just some of the items on it. Garden City is going to share a little bit about their comprehensive plan. We're going to give them an update about our Adams facility. And I know there's like 3 other topics, but you'll see it. Perfect. Thank you. And then if you didn't already see the email, the joint meeting with ITD has been postponed to June. And then moving on to access management, thanks again for our team for presenting last week about access management and their suggestions for us to consider in terms of policy updates. I wanted to ask the commission if anyone has any questions about Commissioner Hansen's proposed edits. And I do have a couple questions for Commissioner Hansen about his policies, but first I want his proposed policy changes. Does anyone have any questions?
No, I wasn't expecting that question, so I didn't come prepared.
Oh.
Madam President, last week I asked everybody to give me your input, staff, and if we want to make some changes. I think what happens is too often proposals just sort of peter out. And so I think, because we have to go through this process of posting notice and make sure we have a public hearing and changing any changes. So I think it's good language. It includes the language that would otherwise be put in there by the passage of our Livable Streets Performance Measures policy, gosh, now 2 years ago, I think. So we start to do this, and I think it's consistent with what the cities asked us to. We certainly heard from Meridian and Boise about that. So
Madam President,
I think we can go forward with it.
there is one comment that I made last week that probably ought to be on the record, and it has to do with the overall spirit of that particular section. I think that we ought to be able to include a preamble to that section. That's my word, maybe not the right word, that directs enough of the intent of that section so that we don't have to make a ton of changes that include the word shall, which will come back to bite us in the future. And I think Steve can put that together and we can make sure it works.
Thank you, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
And Madam President, if you look under 7202.2, it actually is the preamble for the access management section. It talks about the purposes, benefits, and goals.
Yeah,
and that's where most of the language is. Yeah. Okay. So yes, it totally true, but it's there, and it refers back to then the performance measures, and the safety issue that we want to make sure safety is top priority, and it refers back to deference to the city's priorities, land use priorities. So that's why it functions as a preamble, and I think I agree, that's one of the most important sections of the access management policies, the technical requirements.
So unless there's any other questions, how about I propose that we have a work session next week, and I can work with Steve on that preamble wording to fit what you're describing, Commissioner Goldthorpe. And that way we can ask questions of the changes that Commissioner Hansen is requesting ahead of, an adoption hearing. So please review Commissioner Hansen's language. I'll have some additional language for consideration for that work session. And it will also include the staff's request at that time. So please, we'll send that out, but please be prepared for that. And just for example, like one of my questions, Commissioner Hansen, is why the shift from roadway and moving it to street, right? So what's the basis of that edit throughout? So yeah, I think there's some of those pieces.
That's a good question. I've noticed that we use roadway, highway, street inconsistently throughout our policies. And I think if we're talking about streets, we should call them all streets. instead of having different terms at different points. In general, a street, refers to something in an urban context, and a roadway, or there's a debate as to whether a road is just to go from one point to another, and a street serves many functions. We don't do that definition here, so I think because we use terms like in our policy, livable streets design policy, we use streets in other places. Let's just be consistent and call them streets throughout.
Okay. All right. And then I wanted to let everyone know too that, so just shout out to the cities that attended that work session last week, the city of Boise and the city of Meridian. I think the whole concept of cities, making it really clear that cities do have standing to address the commission when there are things that they have questions about or disagree with, so that we can make that determination at the commission level. Making that really clear is a policy that we should debate and discuss. So with that, I have directed staff to come up with a draft policy that would give the cities in the county that authority. And so Steve and team will be ready to answer those questions next week. And we'll likely have, and it's a really simple policy, it's literally like 2 sentences long. We'll have that either, I'm thinking May 3rd probably would be, no, we couldn't have that posted on May 3rd. Okay, the public hearing on the 26th. Okay. So those dates, we'll make sure to send that out to all of you so you're aware of those dates and the timing of all of this. But yes, would love to have, please bring your questions for next week for staff, and they'll have a lot more to say on that and answer your questions. So any questions? Okay, thanks, commissioners. Are there any general issues, housekeeping items we'd like to talk about or schedule for a different hearing? Any questions about today's agenda? Okay, Director.
Madam President, Commissioners, good morning. We're going to start off again a little differently. I've asked Shandy to come up and give you a presentation on where our great communications teams, where they're at on our innovations for this year. Shandy?
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Shandy Lamb, Deputy Director of Communications, happy to be here. So, as you guys know, we're obviously full force on some big projects, including the new website as well as branding, but we did choose several smaller innovations to focus on this year as well. So, as part of the Accelerate Innovation or Lose, the team, let's see if I can get it to work. Our first initiative was to reimagine the Tell Us process using technology from the new website tools that we were given through Granicus. And that is going really well. So we're really excited to launch that in the coming months. The Granicus will have that built for us within the next 2 weeks. At that point, we will be testing it internally and then sending it back to them to make any last minute changes, and then doing all of our internal training on that. So we're excited to roll that out to the public. It comes with some really great features that we've never had on that telesystem in the past, including either internal or external or both FAQs that can be on the side of the page as people are submitting, or as our admins or whoever else, our subject matter experts, are answering questions right there readily available. It allows us to even pull in Tell Us messages from specific emails. If somebody emails our project's email, for instance, right now we're sometimes copying and pasting those over to Tell Us, or sending or forwarding those on to the right person. We do the same thing with social media. So if we are not readily available to answer somebody's question, we have to track down an answer. We'll copy them into Tell Us and then make sure they're routed to the right place. It allows us actually to track from social media and just click on something and pull directly, and it'll make it a Tell Us for us. So we expect that it'll improve efficiency a lot, and we're really excited for our end users as well, our customers, to be able to have hopefully a little bit faster turnaround time. I mean, we're pretty quick right now, but that is with some steps that are kind of unnecessary at this point. So right now, everything goes to Carrie, or somebody on my team at the front desk, and then they determine who it goes to. There'll still be a little bit of that if it's unclear, but some of the things, based on what the user is selecting, will be an indicator of who it should go to. So if they are selecting a pothole, there's no need for it to go to Carrie. It'll automatically route to maintenance. So it'll just cut out a little bit of that inefficiency that we have right now. We're really excited to get that implemented within the next couple of months. Our initiative to transform the special event permit process is going well also. So on the 20th, my team is meeting with Colby's team. Debbie White and John Wasson handle our special event permits. So that's any time that anybody's having a race or a protest or anything that's happening in the public right of way. Right now, they are applying for those permits via PDF or just email. There's not a real consistent way for them to do that. And then it's a lot of emailing back and forth. So moving that into the same system that we're doing with this new TELUS system will allow them to have a dashboard, track all of that in a nice database, and have some automation involved in that to go back and forth with the customer. Again, hopefully improving that customer experience for those that are applying for those permits. And we're really hoping to work with our partner agencies on that. So all of those permits, they're not just applying for permits with us, they also have to make sure that whatever city they're applying with is also on board, their fire department, their police department. So we're really hoping to have a one-stop shop and work collaboratively as much as possible with those agencies. So we are meeting on the 20th, and then we'll build out from there. So we're going a little bit slower on this one because it's the same technology that we're using for TELUS, and we want to make sure that we've worked out all the kinks on that one before we move forward with another process in that technology. Our transform traffic investigation requests innovation is also going well. So this actually comes in two different parts. So we have the traffic investigation requests themselves, which we are looking at innovating with Colby's team, whether that is in this same technology that we're using for TELUS or transitioning that over to fully using the system right now that we're using for TELUS, our Laserfish system. And just making sure that we can automate that more. Their database that they're using right now is, they're getting some indication that it's no longer going to be supported by Microsoft. So we're working with them to just make sure that we have an easy solution moving forward. They do get a lot of traffic investigation requests, and a very small percentage of those are actually sent through the form right now. And so we're really, really hoping with this innovation that we can really guide our customers to using a form rather than having those sent through TELUS, through email, through phone calls, and having everybody submitting those in one place to make that more efficient. So like I said, that's in two different parts. So after an investigation is done, as you know, a petition is required in many instances to implement whatever is found. And right now, the neighbor that came forward with the request is responsible to go out with that petition door to door on a paper and get signatures. So we're working with Colby's team right now to move that over, and we think that actually our engagement HQ page is going to be a really good solution for that. So we are on our second iteration with Colby to work through what that would look like as an online petition, and that would allow neighbors to just easily follow a link, go on and do it that way, rather than putting all of that responsibility on that neighbor to go door to door. So once we get that worked out completely with Colby, it'll go to legal to make sure that they agree with all of the electronic signatures and everything along those lines. And then we hope to have that implemented within the next couple of months as well.
Madam President.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Shandy, I have a question. We've discussed the traffic calming and petitions and all that stuff for a lot of years. And I'm trying to remember exactly when it was, but I believe sometime last year, the commission directed that we weren't going to make it that difficult for people anymore, that if they wanted to come to us and discuss it, that we could make decisions about traffic calming without going through the entire petition process.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I definitely don't want to speak out of turn because
No, Bruce is shaking his head. That's
I'm on a very
behind
different
you.
side of that. Yeah, so from my conversation with Colby the other day, it is part of our policy to require a certain percentage of neighbors to be signing that petition, to move forward with the implementation of any changes from those studies.
Okay.
The policy hasn't changed, so.
No, well, the way we've been implementing it has, because there have been projects that we've been involved on where we have directed from here on the dais that certain traffic calming measures be taken without having gone through any petitioning.
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, yes. The discussions that were given to staff were, how do you make this easier? And some of the traffic calming concepts that you talk about were things that we've now incorporated by bringing in mobile units. We've never done that before, but this is the answer that we're coming forward to you, all of you, with how do we make this easier for the customer? There had been discussion. I think Commissioner Hanson had made several comments about we shouldn't have to have neighborhoods do all this stuff going back and forth when it comes down to wanting to put up speed bumps, that sort of stuff. The rationale for that is that we were concerned that if you have one neighbor that would like to have something changed, well, that one person shouldn't probably speak for the entire neighborhood. That being said, this is our attempt at this point to make it easier for the neighborhood as opposed to going door to door, do it electronically. And such, but that was the discussion that we really had on this.
So Commissioner Goldthorpe, so I think you're right. We have had more of a role in saying these projects need more traffic calming without having to go through that process, but that process still stands for those that don't utilize coming to the commission, right? And so in addition to what staff are doing, the policy still doesn't reflect, I think, the will of the commission in making those barriers less so.
I know one of the first opportunities we'll have to work this is with our meeting with the Hollywood neighborhood.
Commissioner Hanson, did you have a question?
Madam President and Shandy, I think I really appreciate you trying to make it better and easier, a fundamentally flawed policy. It's flawed, I believe, because is indicated by the fact that we've gone around it. The commission has and said, no, we want traffic calming over here, because it's inequitable. It affects neighborhoods inequitably, and I think it's our responsibility to fix that. What I really appreciate about Christie's team is they've incorporated more of that in the evaluation of other projects. Is there a speeding issue in these? So those streets get incorporated into that. Nez Perce is a great example. It's just inequitable to expect people, and I think that also inequity continues if we're expecting to use a lot of electronic tools too. These are some of these neighborhoods. They're renters. They don't have some of the tools that some of the other neighborhoods do. So it's a work in progress. I really appreciate you trying to make an existing policy, which has flaws, work. So thank you. But we have to fix that policy, and it's our responsibility to do that. Maybe that's what we should do next after access management.
Well, I think regardless, the work that you're doing, I think will help us with wherever the policy lands. So thank you, Shandy.
Yes, thank you. And that does, Madam President, Commissioner Hanson, that does remind me as well, part of this process too, we will begin sending mailers to those that are impacted. Again, that goes to the homeowner, not necessarily the resident. So our team will be working with DTS to make sure that the information is going to the right person so that they have that link. But as with everything that we do, we understand not everyone is on computer, and we always have options for ways that they can do that otherwise. All right. Media training for our subject matter experts is our next initiative. That we are planning for May. And that will be divided out by those that do frequently go on camera, or even talk to print media, as well as those who might in the future go on talk to print media. And that's just us working with them to make sure that they understand the importance of having a good relationship with our local media, so that they are not feeling really uncomfortable to do that. We understand that is not everybody's forte, but the subject matter experts are really the people that everyone wants to speak to. They don't want to talk to us. So we want to make sure that everybody is really comfortable doing that, and they understand how they should represent the agency, and what they can do to make sure that we're a transparent government agency. So that will be happening in May. Next, this is kind of an ongoing initiative to continue ride-alongs and do spotlights. So I know Commissioner Hansen, you mentioned crack seal video, so that actually is in the works. Emma has been doing ride-alongs with that team and has been going out with them capturing video, and we are continuing to do that with all sorts of different teams, and that's not only helpful for the community in the end of us being able to get that footage or those photos. It helps us humanize the agency as well, put faces behind the people that are doing those important tasks. And it's really, really good for our team to be able to have a more comprehensive view of what the agency does, so we can answer questions in a better way. So that's just really ongoing. And then we are doing Rover Days at each of the locations as well, so that our team is having more of a face at each location. So every month we will hold just, not that they're meetings, but we're reserving meeting rooms, and we're just doing work for a few hours in each of the locations. So anybody can stop in and talk to us. They can pitch their ideas to us, and they're more familiar with who we are and what we do, so that they can become part of our communications team, because it's really important that all of our employees are part of our team. And I think that's it. Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Shandy. Any questions?
Thank you.
Commissioners, I'm sure you'll agree with me that our deputy directors have really upped the game here at the Ada County Highway District by tremendous volumes across the board. A couple things for all of you. As I shared with you yesterday, Jennifer's team, maintenance, was out doing flood operations at Dry Creek, did Cresta Bank. This morning there was a meeting at the EOC. At this point, they're still suggesting that the river flow should not exceed flood operations. However, we've been in contact with all the mayors who have issues on the area. Let them know that we are examining their bridges. We're all looking for debris coming downstream ahead of time, and we are ready to respond in case there is an issue across the board. As Commissioner Pickering indicated, next week, Tuesday, you have your joint meeting with Garden City. The topics are brief history of the district, traffic mitigation on 42nd, integrated 5-year work plan and raise grant update, Apple maintenance complex update, and the Garden City comprehensive plan update to the commission as to where they are. If there's time, and there may not be, but if there's time, we also have the leading pedestrian interval and the rapid response team briefs to ready to go to add a little bit of information. We'll have more out on that today and such, and we'll be hosting lunch here for the mayor, his council, and of course all of you. As Commissioner Pickering did say, at ITD's request, the joint meeting that we had scheduled for later this week has been postponed until June 16th. We'll have more information on that as we get closer. I'd like to remind all of you that this afternoon is the Boise Chamber event out at Hillcrest for Delta Airlines and such. That's the main group. And I'd also like to invite all of you and remind you that today and tomorrow we have the maintenance rodeo competition going on at the fairgrounds. Today is practice. Where's Jennifer? They're okay to go play, right? Okay, with what I'm going to call a seeing eye maintainer on board, but the equipment's out there. Our teams are practicing tomorrow's competition. Lunch is at 12, award ceremonies at 1 o'clock. If you are available, I know we'd love to have you out there as part of that.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Bruce, what time to play?
Today.
Oh, today's the play day.
Today's play day.
Oh, okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
A lot on the calendar today. Yep.
Right.
Okay, cool.
So we do encourage you, if you'd like to come out and see the tremendous professionalism and expertise that your operators really have. It is absolutely amazing. And then finally, Stacy and I had the opportunity yesterday to go to the Faces of Hope's fundraising luncheon. There were over, Stacy, 600 people in attendance. It was absolutely incredible. We had an opportunity to listen to the gymnast that broke the news media about the terrible abuses that that doctor had on our U.S. She was gymnast A, as they call across the board. It was an amazing event. I will again share with all of you that we have definitely picked this year the absolute perfect group to fund and support for our upcoming golf tournament and such. There's a lot of good and a lot of need out there. So with that, Commissioners, that's my report. You have about 5 minutes, and I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Thanks, Director. Okay, thank you. We'll be at ease until noon. Well, hello, everyone. It's now 12 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone online and in person. Please join us as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered.
About the regular.
Sorry. My bad.
Madam President, I move to adopt the agenda.
Thank
I'll
you.
second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda. Next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. If there's no such requests, I will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Awesome. So, moving on to the regular agenda, the only item on the regular agenda is the condemnation of public right-of-way for Lake Hazel Road and Maple Grove Road intersection, parcel 3, Easton Village Owner Association, LLC. This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing. Well, welcome, Mr. Serdar.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here. Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, David Serdar, right-of-way supervisor for the Ada County Highway District. As stated, this is a condemnation decision briefing and public hearing for a property on Lake Hazel and Maple Grove project. It is Easton Village Owner, LLC. The public necessity for this project is that it is on the ACHD's 2022 through 26 integrated 5-year work plan. The project is scheduled for to be funded for construction in 2024, so it does have a critical timeline on it. This is a vicinity map of the property. As you can see, we have Maple Grove there on the right-hand side, or going north-south, and then Lake Hazel is going right there, if you can see the arrow. This takes us in a little closer. You can see the red, which is actually a permanent easement we are buying. We have a temporary construction easement for the construction of the sidewalk. The red is actually going to be a portion of the sidewalk pathway. And then you can see on each of the entrances, there's 2 temporary construction easements. The size of the property is, it's the same size before and after, because we're just taking an easement in. We're just purchasing an easement interest in it, which is about 1,632 square feet. The highest and best use for this property is high-density residential. And there is currently high-density residential on the property, which is what the buildings are. They're an apartment complex. For the negotiations, the total market value of the property through appraisal was $14,673. We have not, right-of-way has been in negotiations with the owner and their council since October 7th of 2022. There has not been a dispute so far about the money. It was actually more of a dispute about revisions to the documents that the property owners council proposed. They were not acceptable to ACHD. As part of the process, ACHD's legal staff has proposed that we do a friendly condemnation, which we're still in contact with the property owners' legal counsel. We had a communication with them this morning, and we'll have a communication this afternoon. However, that does not, if we aren't able to reach an agreement, or if we are able to reach an agreement, we're asking for the same thing, which is the commission to act on the condemnation order so that we can move forward under either scenario. As always, we always continue to have discussions and negotiations with the other party, as long as they're willing to engage us. It is staff recommendation at this time that we declare the acquisition area necessary for the project as a permanent easement and public use, authorize the staff to proceed with the condemnation action, and execute an order of condemnation for the acquisition area. I will remain standing for any questions that the commission has.
Thank you, Dave. Commissioners, questions?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
just briefly, what sort of document revisions are we talking about to begin?
Steve can address that a little, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, Steve's gonna address that because we had multiple legal reviews of those documents.
Thanks, David. Madam President, Commissioner Steve Price, General Counsel for the record. Commissioner McKinney, specifically, there are numerous terms and conditions in the documents that we provide, and the attorney who's from out of state has changed it so that the district would have a lot of ongoing obligations that we would not otherwise had if we go through a condemnation. And so we would be giving up substantial rights moving forward if there was ever a dispute. The other issue really for us is, I mean, this is only a $14,000 eminent domain. I'm not even sure that they're disputing the amount. Our problem is, as a public entity, we have to treat everybody the same. And we get requests all the time to change the terms and conditions to favor that one party. And once we do that, then we're treating somebody else differently. And so whenever we get in a situation where their lawyer feels very strongly about trying to tie our hands, we simply say, tell you what, you agree to the value, we'll go through, we'll get our condemnation order, we'll file a quick action, we'll do a stipulation on the amount. The judgment gives us what we need, which is the permanent easement, and there are no lingering terms and conditions that we would be subject to. So those are really the two reasons. It drives me crazy in such small dollar cases that we have to do that, but we're really trying to be fair to all that we negotiate with, and at the same time, not bind the district moving forward.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe?
Steve, it sounds like the owners have expected this intersection to be dealt with for some time. I know this is a fairly new development. They couldn't possibly have bought that property not knowing that we were going to expand the intersection, correct?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I think that's very true. I think what happened was we changed the anticipated design so that it would require more. We didn't know exactly all that we needed when the development came through. And so this is just a little piece. I think this really relates to the pathway.
When we when we set the price, that 14,000 and change, do we use, I mean, this is for an easement, do we treat the values and offers any different for this small of a thing as we do when we're taking property fee simple? Just remembering something that I went through in 1990 with the district, and it was easy as can be. We just decided that the value was going to be what the county said the value was, and sign this, here's your check, thanks. And it was fine.
Well, I'll give you a little eminent domain 101, and that is that oddly enough, most of the roads in Ada County are by permanent easement or prescriptive easement, and not fee simple. And My preference is always, these guys will tell you, my preference is always permanent easement. We typically pay somewhere between 70 to 100% of the value of the fee simple value for a permanent easement. In a lot of instances, for instance, a storm drain facility, we have basically taken away all of the property owner, the fee simple owner's enjoyment and use of the land. And in those instances, we'll pay a much larger portion. In any instances which the property owner would still have use of that to meet requirements, let's say setbacks or landscaping requirements, then we would do it around 70, but I can't remember ever doing below 70%. But we really look at how much impact is the easement going to have on the underlying fee owner. And then we adjust accordingly. And we adjust that, you can ask Dave, we adjust that a lot. We have that discussion. We meet once weekly, and we go through that. And we generally err on the side of overcompensating in terms of percentage on permanent easements. It's just not worth the fight.
Yeah, thank you.
But a permanent easement in terms of road and fee simple, we have the same authority.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Yeah, Madam President.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, Dave. So, tell me about the experience of acquiring the property on the other three corners. Have they negotiated and said, oh, yeah, this is fine? Presumably, we're taking is comparable amount. We require a comparable amount of easement.
Commissioner Hanson, I don't have the status with me at this second of all the other three parcels. This is a pretty big project and we're pretty far into it. I believe some of them are acquired, but off the top of my head, I don't want to give you wrong information. I'm happy to
You're about
send
to
an
get
email
the
with
right
a provision.
information.
Oh, this is the last one. Okay, thank you.
So, and Madam President and Dave, in the materials we received to review for this meeting, there was an additional diagram of the actual roundabout, and it showed how it was going to impact the four properties.
Mhm.
Of course, the other three corners have no development on them at all. What struck me as odd was that the roundabout wasn't shifted over a little bit to the east, because this is the only corner that has development on it. We did this up at Pierce Park, where we shifted a little bit north because of issues with the property. We haven't moved forward on that yet, but in the design, we shifted it. It looks like, regardless of the existence of a dense residential facility, we just said, no, it's just gonna go straight, as if they weren't there. So, is there a reason why our engineers or the consultants didn't just sort of look at that and say, why don't we shift it over a little bit, because we've got the space and there's no development on those other three corners, and then we wouldn't have to worry about being quite so close to these buildings.
Madam President, members of the commission, so we work very carefully, commissioners, with all the property owners when we go through the design process related to a roundabout. Commissioner Hanson, you're correct. At times, we do have the ability to move things around a little bit. In this instance, although there may not be development on those corners, those property owners have plans for development. And they also, I think some of them have some active entitlement process going on. And so when we work with them, it's not as simple as just saying, well, your land is empty, so we're going to move the roundabout onto your land. It's not quite like that, because they have plans and hopes and dreams for their property also. And in the end, we try to balance out those needs as best we can. There has been no dispute with the apartment complex related to the pathway location, the proximity of the pathway to the buildings. We've had no issues with that, so we did work with everyone, and that wasn't an issue as we've gone through this process.
Well, I'm glad you're up here. Thank you, Madam President and Justin. So a decision was made last year before, that Maple Grove to the north would be a 5-lane arterial with multi-use paths on each side. The decision was not made with respect to the southern part of Maple Grove, which dead ends. Does this design assume a 5-lane arterial continuing south with separated multi-use pathway, and that's why we need this space on the south leg of this roundabout?
Madam President, members of the commission, the design is consistent with our master street map designations for this area. Maple Grove is anticipated to be 5 lanes all the way down to Lake Hazel. South of Lake Hazel, Maple Grove does show a connection over the New York Canal in the future, if and when that ever occurs. That is shown on our master street map. We've preserved the right-of-way for that connection over the New York Canal on Maple Grove. And I'm gonna have to double check this, but I'm pretty sure Maple Grove south of Lake Hazel is designated as a 3-lane facility, not a 5-lane facility. So there's a transition at Lake Hazel, which is consistent with a lot of roadways on the master street map. Because Lake Hazel is an east-west mobility corridor, and we have these major north-south corridors, Maple Grove connecting to Lake Hazel, I'm pretty sure that south of Lake Hazel, Maple Grove is a 3-lane facility. I'll have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure about that, and we can find out probably in the next 30 seconds if that is the case or not. But that's our plan is to be our traffic analysis and plan is consistent with our CIP and our master street map for this intersection.
Thank you.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
One last thing, and that doesn't have to do with anything Justin's got to worry about. For a couple of 3 years now, one of the big arguments in this part of my district is the creation of the density projects and limited parking, and this is probably the focal point of that consternation. So it's going to be really interesting to see how parking for Charter Point works out after this is done.
Any other questions for Dave before we move on? Okay, is the applicant, or not the applicant, excuse me, but is the other property owner here to testify? Okay, is there any member of the public that would like to comment? Okay. Well, with that, I will close the public hearing. Dave, do you mind putting it to the slide for the staff request, or Ken? Can you put the final slide for the staff recommendation, slide 15?
There you go.
There we go, perfect. Okay, commissioners, we have a motion.
Yes, Madam President, I would move that we approve the condemnation of the right-of-way for Lake Hazel and Maple Grove intersection, Parcel 3, Eastern Village Owners Association, LLC.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we need to include any of these other elements in that motion? Okay, perfect. Any discussion?
Madam President, I'll be voting no when Maple Grove was designated by a prior commission to be 5 lanes. I opposed that. I didn't think there was a public necessity. There certainly isn't a public necessity to have the configuration of Maple Grove south of this roundabout as wide as it is. And so I don't think the public necessity is there. And in order to condemn private property for something that I don't believe is supported by public necessity. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other discussion items? Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, motion passed. Thank you, Dave. Moving on to public communications. Does any member of the public wish to address the commission at this time? Okay, well, with that, the meeting is adjourned. We will be rolling into our post-commission work session. Very excited. It's the 2024-2028 Integrated 5-Year Work Plan check-in, early considerations. Welcome, Christy.
All right, well, good afternoon, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Christy Enselman, the Planning and Programming Supervisor. And so today we'll be going over some early programming considerations for the integrated 5-year work plan. That is the purpose of today's work session. But I want to clarify that as we continue through the development of that, we greatly appreciate the commission's input in the early stages. But I want to be very clear that this work session is not intended to address all of the comments that we've received, but to highlight some very high-level items and considerations as we start the very early stages of our programming of the 24-28 integrated 5-year work plan. I like to think of this as a 150,000 level review of what we're looking at. So this is just a snapshot of the integrated 5-year work plan development schedule. I just wanted to highlight the completion of the public and partner agency outreach, and we've now begun actively programming for the integrated 5-year work plan based on what we've heard from them, from the commission and the public. So there's a lot of work yet to be done. I also just want to highlight the process that's involved in the development of the integrated 5-year work plan and quickly review the many steps that are included through that. As you know, selecting projects and the development of the plan is a very multi-layered process. We get projects from a variety of places, the public, our partners, adopted plans, and our wonderful commission. Those projects are then compiled and they go through our prioritization process, which is what we will begin here very shortly. Once we adopted that new industry-leading prioritization process, and that helps inform our programming as we create the plan that we all know and love, right? So I have this broken up into certain components. So the very beginning of the presentation, I'm going to go over some projects that staff is looking to add into the integrated 5-year work plan that aren't currently in there. So the last adopted plan was the 22-26. So I'll go through that, some accelerations, a potential delay, as well as some high level on some larger efforts that we're doing as part of this update. So one of the first projects I wanted to highlight was the Star Road Chinden to State. This project, we would look to add it into the program and get it into a year for a concept evaluation. This would be a very large effort. It's similar to what we did with the Linder Road project, basically the same extents. This one is actually a little bit longer than the Linder Chinden to State. So this one was basically the number 1 through 3 request from the city of Star. It also showed up on Ada County's prioritization list. And this particular segment, we received 31 comments on that initial outreach to the public. It's also identified in their neighborhood plan. So if you see that NP on the bottom, it's whether it was identified through the neighborhood plan process. This project would widen the roadway to 5 lanes, widen and replace bridges, which there are multiple along this corridor, as well as some bike and ped safety facilities along the corridor. Another project we would look to add to the program is Deer Flat, Linder to State Highway 69. This was the City of Cuna's, it was on the City of Cuna's prioritization list, Ada counties, as well as the Cuna School District. And when you see multiple numbers there, is sometimes there's components to that roadway that they're asking for. They may be asking for the road widening in addition to some pedestrian crossings, in addition to some bike facilities. So you may see those duplicates. That's why there's 3 requests from the City of Cuna along this corridor. Because as I'm sure Goldthorpe is well aware, there's a lot of schools that utilize this particular section of Deer Flat. So this roadway would look to widen, or the project is to widen the road to 5 lanes. We would realign K Street and signalize that where it intersects to Deer Flat, as well as some enhanced crossings at the Cuna High School and Sailor Way, as well as obviously bike and ped facilities as part of our Complete Streets program.
Do we have this one scoped out and dated?
We do have this project scoped. We would look to add this design and right-of-way into the integrated 5-year work plan.
Okay, cool.
And just remember, these are projects we don't currently have in the integrated 5-year work plan as we work to add them in. Wait for Madam President to return. No, continue. Okay. Huh? Continue. Keep going.
Please keep going.
Okay. The next one we're looking to add is the Hill Road and Horseshoe Bend intersection. This is identified through our master street map for a roundabout to be constructed at that intersection. We would then also add that small segment from 55 to Horseshoe Bend. That was also a high priority of our partner agencies. It was the intersection was the City of Eagles, and the roadway was the City of Eagles number 4 request. So that was look to add some roadway maintenance to that road segment, as well as some bike and pedestrian safety improvements along that corridor. We recently just scoped Hill and Horseshoe Bend. We had already scoped the Hill State Highway 55 to Horseshoe Bend component as well. Another project we look to add into the program is the Latah Alpine to Emerald. This was a request from VRT, from the City of Boise. Our Bicycle Advisory Committee also identified this corridor on their request lists, and this particular stretch received 26 public responses on that initial outreach that we did. We would be looking to add design and potentially right-of-way of this segment into the integrated 5-year work plan. It would include road maintenance improvements, railroad crossing improvements, as well as bike and ped safety enhancements along that stretch.
Quick question on that.
Yep.
Is the scope also including the multi-use path or sidewalk on the cemetery side?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. We wouldn't forget about that. Right. So the next grouping that I'm going to look at, there are a couple projects that we will look to accelerate components of it within the development of this integrated 5-year work plan. If you remember, the Linda Road overpass to Franklin, Linda Road Overland to Franklin, that includes the overpass of the state system. This was in the 2026 for just design efforts. There was nothing else identified. So this would actually look to accelerate both right-of-way and construction in 2 years into the integrated 5-year work plan. The I-85 overpass, that component would be funded by ITD, but we are in close coordination with ITD on the development of this particular project. This would be widening to 5 lanes, obviously only 4 lanes across the interstate, bike and pedestrian improvements. There's also a bridge, a couple bridge replacements that would be included on this project, and then enhancing the ped crossing at Waltman and 10 Mile. This was the City of Meridian's number 1 request. It was also on Ada County's request list. And this segment, we received 32 comments from the public when we went out earlier this year.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Christy, just on this one, can you tell me, and maybe you don't know this offhand, but continuing then on Linda Road from Franklin to Cherry Lane, is that segment currently already on the 5-year work plan or not?
I do not believe so. I would have to get back to you on that. We have approximately, the last adoption, we had over 550 projects, and as much as I try to memorize every single one, I don't, but I'm happy to get that information to you.
Because what we've got there from Franklin Road north for the first like half mile or so, it's right next to Meridian High School. That's a 5-lane section. It was improved some time ago. And then you've got a real bottleneck segment that's just down to 2 lanes, maybe it's 3 lanes, going then to Cherry Lane. So just curious where that stands. I'll look for that.
Okay. And then another one we're looking to accelerate is the Eckert Road. It's bridges and intersection. It's kind of a very complex project is what I will say to this one. So this is one we would look to add the concept study into this, and we're currently targeting next year to look at the concept 24 into 25, because it would be such a large concept study. And that would be replacing the 2 bridges adjacent to Barber Park, including the intersection at Boise and Eckert in the design and concept level as well. This was Ada County's number 1 and number 2. It was Boise's number 15. There were a few public requests. They were specifically targeted for the Boise and Eckert intersection. They were like, please include this. So we already had that kind of earmarked to include it as part of this project. So we will continue to work on that.
And Christy, I just want to add too, I mean, we've worked with the county on various issues with this section of roadway and those bridges. So I think that the 2 public requests is not indicative
No.
of the massive amount of, public response for
Yes.
that section to be improved.
And it was just two during this latest outreach.
course,
We
of course.
have received over the years many requests for this, and those bridges are at the point where they do need to be replaced. So there's multifacets going into why this one is being
Yeah.
accelerated.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. And then the next grouping, we just have one project that staff consideration is delaying the Orchard Street realignment project. We received communication from the city of Boise via a letter that this was no longer a priority, and this particular segment was removed entirely from their prioritization list. So we would look to delay the right-of-way and construction to future years to have continuing conversations with the city of Boise, but taking it out of the current year that it is planned for is a lot of funding that we would have to quickly adjust if we didn't make those adjustments now.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
one question, Christie. We're going to leave it in the document, just unfunded, correct?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, that's correct. We would leave it in the integrated 5-year work plan so that we can continue to have those discussions with our partner agencies, but not remove it entirely. Just push the funding for right-of-way and construction out to future.
As you know, even though the city isn't considering it that important, all the neighbors consider it vital.
I drive it every day, so I'm well aware. And then the next grouping we're going to go through, these are some high-level, large efforts that we're doing, kind of grouped together to just give some updates on where we're at. The first one is State Street corridor. As you know, we're continuing that coordination with the city. This did come through as the Valley Regional Transit, their #1 request, and then for these segments, and then the city of Boise, it was their 2, 3, 6, 7, and 8. So it's continuing to look at that and to look at potential funding options to start moving these projects forward, and hopefully into a year in this next update. I just didn't want to tell you we were going to include it until we continue working through some of that coordination, but wanted to highlight it because it is still it is still important to the district as we work through these. The next is just some concept study updates. So we did adopt 10 individual concept studies. That's not counting for scoping or our neighborhood plans, but these were 10 very specific projects that were adopted through concept this last year. And so all of them are included in the plan and will continue to move forward, and some were even accelerated after the adoption of the concept studies themselves. So just want to highlight that these are not, we're not forgetting about them, we're moving them forward as we do with most of our concepts. And also to highlight our RAISE grant projects. As you guys are aware, we received significant amount of funding to do design on all of these projects. A little over $5 million. So there's 25 total projects that are identified here. You'll see that it's shown as 24 to 26. It will take, that's a big design project. It's gonna take us a little time to get some federally funded projects designed, but what's really great is it hits some areas that are in significant need of getting some improvements, including in Garden City, some in downtown Boise, some in, Bench area. So these are some really great projects that we're very excited about moving forward. Also, just a quick update. I'm sure I think you've received this recently, but also included in the 5-year work plan is our site development. So we have multiple sites, our Franklin, Ustick, and Apple sites that are continuing through their process. Franklin site, they're looking at May of this year for the building permit to be issued for the buildings for the vertical elements. And summer of 2024 is the anticipated completion date of our Franklin site. It's very exciting. And then our Ustick and Apple sites are kind of moving along the same track with design underway. In May of 23, we would look at 30% design of those sites and buildings. In May of 24, being at 100% design, the construction would be phased over 5 years with completion in 2028. So you'll continue to see those in the integrated 5-year work plan as well as they move through their process. And then also just touching on our scoping efforts for this year. We're well underway, the scoping effort. We've contracted with a consultant to do a minimum of 75 projects for this year's scoping effort. We've recently added these 14 to that effort, and this was in direct response to partner agency requests, public request and direction that we've heard from the commission. So there's, you'll see there's several road and intersection projects and quite a few safety enhancement with bike and pedestrian components to them along those corridors. And it was a very high 150,000 level view of some things that we are looking at as we're beginning the very early stages of programming for the integrated 5-year work plan. The next commission meeting that we have coming back to you is in May, and that's a joint presentation with Christine on the budget and integrated 5-year work plan revenue discussions. And I will stand for any questions.
Thank you so much, Christy. Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner
Madam President
Hanson.
And Christy, I don't want to take your time to go through some of the things that were raised. I know you mentioned there's we're moving forward on the 10 projects that were scoped, the 10 areas, and also we have some new things we're going to scope. So there's a couple of ones that we've started the scoping on, but we haven't finished, or we're going to do it. I think you know what some of those are, and the areas that I got some strong input on. So I just want to kind of go over some of those with you, if that's okay.
I'll follow up with you with
Thanks.
a meeting.
Thanks, Christy. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, with that, see you all next week.